you to join. I think it's waiting. Let's see.
Okay, there I am.
Yes,
I've been to 4 different rooms in my house.
Ellen Pompeo, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Hi, how are you?
How are you? I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. It was probably my fault.
Sorry. I mean, it could have been the room that I was in too, but I've been in that room before and it's worked. But anyway, it could be the rain. Who knows? How are you?
Good. How are you? So I'm in New York.
Thanks.
I watched the final episode of season 16. In California, It hasn't aired yet, so we're not going to do spoilers. But do you watch Grey's Anatomy when it's on, or do you you've already seen it? But do you watch it live when it's on, or do you not watch it live?
I don't. I mean, I did today. I watched in the past. Kelly McCreary and I have been doing lives, and it's been pretty fun. So I have been watching. I don't normally watch, but I have been just in lieu of this this isolation. I thought we thought it would be something nice for the fans and entertaining and fun for us.
And so tonight's episode wasn't supposed to be your final episode of the season, right?
Was not. No, it was episode 21, and we were slated to do 25. So we still had 4 more to go. So
do you know if those 4 will be filmed as the beginning of season 17, or do you think they'll be compressed, or is it still all being decided?
I don't know. As far as I know, the writer's room is not up yet. Obviously, they can't gather. I suppose they could do Zooms, but, maybe they'll do Zooms. Maybe they'll get together in a couple of weeks. And I think the plan is to resume the room in a couple of weeks. However they resume it, whether it's Zoom or,
What do you think about this season and Meredith's arc? Did you have a favorite episode, or did you have a favorite storyline this season?
Well, I have to say that, one thing that Krista and I talk a lot about is, as subtly as we can, on a network sort of soapy drama, to call out, our healthcare system and the problems with it. So, the fact that we were able to do that, and we were able to have a storyline that dealt with a young child not having health insurance, an undocumented child not having health insurance, was a storyline that Krista and I felt really grateful to be able to tell. So I would say that's definitely was a highlight of this season and last for me, to sort of continue that. And then I think what I love about what Krista's doing is, and I know everybody's not so crazy about it sometimes, and whatever, they don't have to watch if they're not crazy about it, but to touch on political issues like this, I think is really important. To talk about the human trafficking that was in, I think, was it last week's episode? To where this mental illness storyline with Giacomo Gianotti, I think it's all really important stuff. And so I'm proud that we have such a platform to be able to tell these stories in an entertaining way, but sort of subliminally drop in messages and bring issues to light that we think, need to have more light shown on them.
Do you think that there will be an episode of Grey's that addresses what's happening right now in the United States of America?
I don't know. I thought about it. It's obviously, we don't want to get too political here, but I was just watching the news, and I saw a clip of Barack Obama in 2014 saying that a pandemic was kind of inevitable and that we should be prepared for it. And then in 2014, the Republicans were not granting him the budget, the access to put together what he felt like he needed to keep the American people safe, is how he put it in his words. So, in 2014, Barack Obama was very well aware that this was going to happen, and very well aware that we needed to be more prepared than we were at that time for it. So the fact that, we're 5 years later and we're not prepared, there's some people who drop the ball, for sure. It's disappointing.
I've noticed that you've been very vocal on Instagram, celebrating doctors, encouraging people to stay at home. Do you have a message? I know that you recorded a message a few weeks ago. Do you have a message now, given the fact that we're nearing the peak of the epidemic, given what we've seen, the images that we've seen coming out of hospitals and the heroics of doctors and nurses?
I think that, for myself, I know that I have to keep reminding myself this every day, and I have small kids, and it's really more challenging for the children to understand because they don't have the perspective that we have. But as hard as we think this is, as hard as we think it is to stay in and not see our friends and not go out, even if the weather is beautiful, I get it. But my goodness, can you imagine having to suit up? Hopefully suit up. Hopefully you have the PPE to suit up and walk straight into a hospital every single day and deal with sick person after sick person after sick person. We don't know sacrifice. Sitting in our houses, being bored, not having anything to do, being alone, and loneliness is a real thing. And I don't certainly want to downplay that. And I don't want to also downplay people financially struggling. I mean, there's a lot of fallout from this in all areas. So I don't want to say that sort of, anyone is suffering less because it's all relative, right? But certainly our healthcare professionals, at the very least, the fact that they're fighting this fight unprepared without the proper, gear is really heartbreaking for me. So I think that, when people are struggling, if you're struggling, I think it's always helpful to think of someone else and think of what you could do for someone else, or there's always someone who has it worse. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you first realize that Meredith Grey was such an empowering hero to so many people, and especially people in the medical community? When did you realize that people were going to medical school because of her and because of the character that you and Shonda created?
I think that it's really started probably like year 10, because by that time it was everybody who had sort of grown up with the show had now, they started watching the show when they were, 14 or whatever. So when they're 24, they're thinking about, they've graduated college and now they're in medical school, right? Yeah. So I think it was about year 10 when it really started. People were saying, I went to medical school because of you. I went to nursing school because of you. I'm an x-ray tech because of Grey's. So I think it was probably around year 10 where we started to see the decade-long effect that the show had on people.
When you first read the pilot back in 2005, did you always see her as an empowered feminist, or is that a journey that came through the writing through the seasons? Because she is really one of the strongest characters in recent TV history.
Thank you for saying that. No, that didn't, never. Well, I did recognize that the film roles that I was being offered at the time were all the girlfriends and sort of just the chick in the movie with not really a lot to do. And I did recognize when I read the pilot that, wow, this is a female lead with a career. Wow. I wasn't seeing many of those parts. So I did recognize that. But I think her journey to becoming powerful was not really, I don't know. I don't think it was so obvious to me. I have a different perspective, obviously, and maybe people see the beginning of the show as more empowering than I did. But, that pick me, choose me, love me was like, I was like, why am I begging a man to love me? To me, that's not empowering. So, if we, I don't know what season is that? Is that 2 or?
I think that was 2, right? That's when Addison came back and then she asks Derek. I think that's the beginning of season 2, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. So anyway, I don't think that Meredith, I think that, with television shows specifically, they don't really know where they're going, right? Yeah. Shonda definitely had an idea for characters, and they have to have some sort of arcs. But I think that a show that runs for as long as Grey's, I think that the show has had to grow with the characters. Mm-hmm. so it's like I'm 15 years older now, so I'm so much stronger person than I was then. And I think that it just evolves naturally. I think the writers get to know you, and I think the writers and the showrunners, I think they watch the dailies and they watch the show, and I think things just naturally evolve and things happen in people's life, and they have children. And I think Grey's is so unique because we've been on the air for so long. They've all watched me grow up. That Shonda and the writers, we've all grown up together. So I think when you grow up together with your showrunner and with writers like that, I mean, Krista and I have grown up together too. She was off the show for a time, but we still have grown up together. So I think that it's been an interesting evolution because, we've all sort of become mothers together and found our voice together. As strong as Shonda is, I don't think she had the same sense of empowerment then that she does now. So I think that's just like a really nice journey in life to be able to stick with something. It's one of the cool things about being on a show for so long is having that journey together.
Was there a moment where you felt like your voice and Meredith's voice were becoming aligned, or that she had sort of stepped into the skin that you were inhabiting?
No, I don't know. I think that writers and showrunners, I think they watch dailies.
Yeah.
I think with all characters, I think they watch dailies, and I think they watch so much footage of you that they become really, really good at sort of, I don't want to say exploiting because that seems like a negative term, and I don't mean this at all to be negative, but they're good at highlighting maybe sort of what your strengths are. And
they're good at writing for you. They're writing Meredith for you. Now that they know who you are as a, actress, they're able to, right?
Yeah. But also, also you can't, I mean, obviously who I am is individual to who I am, but I think having the platform of the show and having so much success in my life, so much commercial success, has empowered me. So the show has empowered me as much as I've empowered the show. So I think it's a kind of two-way street there.
Last year, you guys passed ER as the longest running primetime medical drama in television history. One, did you ever think that would happen at some point, maybe in the first few years? And two, how did it feel to have that milestone?
No, I never. So of course I famously told the story 17,000 times about how I said I hate medical shows and I'll never do one, and they give me anxiety and I can't watch it. Turns me into a hypochondriac. So I didn't ever think that I would stay on the show this long, and I don't know. It happened, and it's sort of, here I am. I certainly, it's the irony in it is that, I said, I'll never stay on a medical show. I'll never do a medical show. I don't want to do it. And then here I am 15 years later. And it's been this incredible platform for me and allowed me to stay home and so with my kids so much and not travel and the circus life of an actor. So it's I thought that it wasn't the road less traveled to stay on a television show for this many years, but actually it is the road less traveled because most people wouldn't stay on a show this long. They want to do other things. And so that's been ironic in itself that, you think you want to take the road less traveled and you think, well, this can't be the road less traveled. This is too obvious a choice, but it's turned out to be the road less traveled because most actors, would never want to be on a show this long. And as soon as they get off, they do everything in their power to try to distance themselves from the show instead of lean into how much the show has given them and how many blessings the show gave them and how fantastic it was and how many lives it touched. Instead of leaning into that, everyone sort of tries to run away from it and wants their identity to be anything else but that. So I think the road less traveled is leaning into that, and that's what I'm doing.
Did you ever feel that way, that you wanted to run away from it? Was there a period?
Oh, of course, 15,000 times.
Are you still a hypochondriac?
Well, I have to say, I don't know if it's I'm a hypochondriac or if it's this, this crisis that we're dealing with. But like every day I wake up and I'm like, do I have a sore throat?
Yeah, a lot of my friends feel that way too. It's hard and it's scary because when you see so many images on the news and you're reading social media and it's very widespread and we weren't prepared, and so it's a very scary thing. I don't think that's being a hypochondriac. I think that's just being a human being right now.
Yeah, and I haven't been out of my house. And is this Thursday? Is this Thursday?
It's Thursday. Yeah, it's Grace night.
Today's 5 weeks for me.
Wow.
This is 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so, 5 weeks. But like packages come to my house, or my husband goes out to get groceries. It's like wipe everything down, and I think he might think I'm a little dramatic when I'm like, keep the groceries outside and wipe everything down outside. I might be getting on his nerves a little bit.
I do that too, though. I think you have to, because you don't know where the groceries have been and you want to be safe. And I think a lot of people, there's videos on YouTube about why you should do that. So I actually think you're doing the thing that you should be doing and you're being safe.
And the scary thing is like the last thing you want to do, unfortunately, is go to a hospital right now. Right. It's like where we don't want to be, unfortunately. And I know the healthcare professions, I know they're sick about that too. That it's like, my goodness, for all the good they're doing.
Do you have a place in your mind where Meredith Grey goes on her final? I know we don't know when the final episode will be, but do you have a sense of where her final point will be?
No, I have no expectations, and that's how I survive.
So you have no wishes for her. You have no plans for her. You have no image of like what that final scene might be.
Not the final scene. No, the final episode I did, but I can't really tell you because then,
of course not,
I'd have to kill you. But Krista and I have talked about potential things, but who knows?
Do you have an end date in mind? I know you're signed on for one more season. Do you feel like you could continue on?
I am signed on for one more season is all I can say.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about Justin Chambers leaving, because that was a big moment for this season of Grey's Anatomy. How did it feel to read that script, and how did it feel to watch that episode back? Because I personally was crying. It was very emotional, and I thought beautifully done.
It was beautifully done. The writers did a fantastic job. I think, Justin said it perfectly in his statement. There really is there's no good way to say goodbye to a character like that. And we didn't get to read that script. We all filmed our parts not having read it.
Oh.
So we did not know because they wanted to be very confidential about that storyline, and they didn't want it to leak or get out. So we all just sort of read our parts on the day when we showed up. Debbie Allen directed it, and she said, you're going to be doing this. So I had never, even when I filmed it, I had never seen the script or didn't know how it was going to cut together. Once I had filmed it, then I kind of knew a general, Debbie had kind of told me what the episode was going to look like. But I thought they did a great job. And, I have to say, when I watch that episode, and I see those early days of the show, which, like I said before, I typically don't watch the show. It's, it's too much. I film it, I live it. I'm too critical of myself. And, the show really back then was just, so good. I wish we had an appreciation for it then about how good it was. I don't think we did. I don't think any of us did. There was too much shit going on. It was too big. It was too hot. It was too fast. There was just so much going on in the beginning. It was more attention and more work than any of us had ever experienced or done in our life. We were exhausted, and none of us had that kind of attention. And, I wish we had appreciated it for really how good it was, because man, the show was fantastic, back then. It's almost like a different show now. And it's great for its own other reasons, but, yeah, so my point is I'm happy with the way it ended, because I think that Alex going back to be with Izzy, like I said in my Instagram post, is an homage to those first days of that show. Which, the first 6 seasons are just with that original cast are just fantastic.
Right, because it was a different show in a lot of different ways back then, and nothing on television goes on for 16 years now. That's, a really unheard thing. And so for you to have continued to do it, of course, Grace has evolved. And it was, I remember watching it in 2005 and 2006 and I remember like how excited I would be on Sunday nights when it would come on because it was such an incredible piece of television. It really was, and it's now television history. I wanted to ask you, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to ask you one last question. You have a lot of fans in our office of your Instagram account and your Twitter account. And
Yay,
so I was just wondering, just to close, what's the secret to your success on social media? Do you have a philosophy, or do you just sort of figure it out as you go along?
I don't. I'm super spontaneous. I don't know if you can tell. My daughter just texts me, I love you. So cute. I don't have anybody do my social media. I do it myself. And I'm super spur of the moment. I'm very, very spontaneous. And I think that, I don't like sort of calculated stuff and overly thought out stuff. I think, I crave authenticity. Certainly, like in my friends and in people, it's just something that I'm drawn to. And I think that if you can be authentic, it's like the biggest gift you can give people. So, I know some people, don't like to show their kids, and I typically try not to, but I just couldn't help it that day when I was filming Sienna, and she just was like, it was just like I feel like how the world feels right now. I don't know if you saw it, but like,
yeah, I did.
We all could just like feel like, oh my God, if I have to stay in the house one more day, and I don't. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
And you don't know when you'll be back to shoot the next season, because obviously none of us know when things will go back to normal.
I know. Man, I hope that, we're back in July like we normally are,
Yeah.
Usually we go back like in late July or August. It depends on, it's like a 2-week window on either side. But I pray that we're back at the end of July. I pray the world is back to normal by then. And I hope we can, start when we're supposed to start.
I do too. I think a lot of people do. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks so much. This was fun. Thank you.
It was.
Thanks everybody for your questions and your little hearts in the corner. And I'm sorry I was in the wrong room.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for watching.
Good night. Stay well.
Good night.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.